This week's episode of the And She Looked Up podcast is brought to you by our premium subscriber community on Patreon and Buzzsprout. Their ongoing financial support of the show ensures I can continue to bring the podcast to you. Want to help out? Head over to patreon.com/And She Looked Up. That's Patreon, patreon.com/And She Looked Up. There you can join the community for free, or you can choose to be a premium supporter for $4.50 a month, and that's in Canadian dollars. Paid supporters get access to a monthly exclusive podcast episode only available to premium subscribers. You can also click the Support the Show link in the episode notes on your podcast player to support us via Buzzsprout, where you will also get access to each month's exclusive premium supporter episode. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all our monthly supporters. They are the engine that keeps the podcast running, and they're a pretty cool bunch too. And now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to the And She Looked Up podcast. Each week, we sit down with inspiring Canadian women who create for a living. We talk about their creative journeys and their best business tips, as well as the creative and business mindset issues all creative entrepreneurs struggle with. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfield, and after leaving a 20-year career in corporate retail, I've been happily self-employed for 12 years. I'm a graphic designer, an illustrator, and a multi-six-figure-a-year entrepreneur in the digital content space. This podcast is for the artists, the makers, and the creatives who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the And She Looked Up podcast. As always, I am your host, Melissa, and this week my semi-regular co-host, Heather Travis, is here. Hello, Heather.
Hello, Melissa. Happy day to you.
Happy day, yes. So today we are going to be talking about, so Heather and I talk about community on this show all the time. If you listen regularly, you probably are very aware of how we feel about building a community around your business. But one of the things that I keep seeing pop up quite often, and we were just talking about this before we came on to record, is that sometimes it's not always obvious how to find your community or how to find your people or how to find your customer. And I think Heather and I have been doing this for a very long time now and with multiple businesses. So I think it's something we don't think about quite as much as we maybe did when we first started out. And so last night when I was prepping for this episode, I was kind of thinking back to when I first started out freelancing, which was in 2008. I hadn't quit my day job yet. I was trying to remember, like, how did I get the word out? How did people find me? And that led me to thinking about how that happened with all my businesses, because it's not something that just happens, as we've talked about many times on the show. And with the most recent business, I'm still kind of in that stage of finding my people. So I feel like it's a little bit fresh in my head right now. But when I thought back on it, it really was like, in some ways it was trial and error.
Yes.
And in other ways, it was kind of, I think, being willing to almost change course a little bit, in that the original idea of who I thought my customer would be actually didn't turn out to be who my customer really was. And as I sort of started to get myself out there a little more, I started to realize that there was a bigger need over here. And if I just adjusted things a little bit, people would be excited to talk to me. So so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about, if you are in those early stages of starting, whether it's creative services, whether you are selling your creations as a product. So whether that is your art, your sewing, your photography, whatever the case may be, how do you find customers to create that community? And sometimes when you're starting out, it's not obvious, I think, is what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can brainstorm some ideas today on how to get how to find your people. And I think the first step in this process is you have to know how to tell people what it is that you do. Because
Yes.
before we start, let's just draw a line under all of this. Nobody's showing up at your door. You are not building it and they are not coming. Like that is not how it
Correct.
works. Okay.
No.
So you have to go into this knowing that there is nobody standing on your doorstep waiting for you to just open the door and say, come on in. Okay.
Hmm.
So we want to get you to the point that they are standing on your doorstep waiting to come
Yeah.
in. So we're really starting from scratch here. If you're
Yes.
new or if you're not new, but you're
Yes.
struggling with this. So, Heather,
I
um, go for it.
I think if we're starting at the beginning and we know this is where I always start, you need to make sure you are confident, just like Melissa said, on what it is you're selling. And that's part of your brand story. You need to know the answers to some very critical questions: who you are, what it is you're doing, what it is you're making, creating, selling, servicing, etc., how you're going to do that, how you're going to deliver it, and the why. Like, what is your raison d'etre? What is the little spark inside you? Because if you can nail the quick sound bites on all of those things, when you do all of the things that we're going to talk about, reaching out to your community, both online and offline, you need to be able to talk about it. So once you find that person, you can't just say, I'm Heather, I sell art. Do you want to buy some? That doesn't really go anywhere, right? You need to connect with people on a more meaningful level. And that only goes by thoroughly understanding what it is that you are bringing to the table. So we'll
Yes.
start there.
I
Yeah.
think it's important to say too that when Heather says you need to know your brand story, you don't need to have a logo at this point. You don't need to have
Nope.
brand colors. You don't need to have a pretty website. That is your branding assets. What you
Yes.
need so that's completely different. And you don't need to have that when you start out. I mean, if you do,
Mm-mm.
that's great and it's nice, but you don't need to have it. But you
Nope.
do need to be able to know what you're all about, and you need to be able to tell people what you're all about. If Heather came to my door and said, "Hi, I'm Heather, I sell art," what would be the first questions I might ask her? Well, that's great. What kind of art do
What
you
kind of
sell,
art?
Heather?
Exactly. What kind of art? How big is it? What themes does it have? What style is it in? All of these things. And you don't need to have a beautifully written statement for all of this stuff. It can just be ideas that are in your brain that as you talk to people, you can flush it out. Like you will find your people through honest conversation and through honesty with yourself. And so if you start there, and then apply some strategies on actually finding people online and actually finding people offline, it will make a it will make a big difference. You need to know what you're showing up to the table with and what you actually hope to get in return. So you
Yes.
need to be very clear about what it is that you want in all of it, right?
Yes. This
Yeah.
is particularly important if you're a creative service provider. When you're selling a product, you have something physical, tangible that you can show a person so they can see.
Hmm.
Like Heather could walk around to my door with a painting in her hands and say,
Hmm.
"This, I sell art. This is one of my paintings." That would at least give me an idea of what. But when you're doing creative services, so this is things like graphic design, copywriting, photography services, in those instances, people are really going to want to know about what the actual service is you provide. So you're going to need to
Hmm.
work those things out in your head. Like, what am I actually going to give people when they give me money? What are they going to
Yes.
walk away with? Is it going to be a completed website? Is it going to be a logo? Is it going to be 30 images from their wedding,
Yep.
so those are all things that you need to think about. And we did a whole episode on why your brand is not your logo, and we'll link to that in the show notes because that is a great one to listen to if you are trying to figure out what your brand story is and you're
Hmm.
not sure
Yep.
how to. So we'll link to that. But let's say that you know all those things.
Hmm.
And you're kind of like, okay, I'm Heather. I do large scale paintings that are bright, bold, and colorful. I do murals and I do work on commission. Okay, so we know a little
Mhm.
bit more about you at this point. That's cool. Who are you telling that to?
Yep.
Like, did you put a sign on your on your door?
Actually,
Well,
funny enough,
that could
for
work.
my studio open house, I did put a sign on the door. But I divide, and I think Melissa, you do the same thing. I divide outreach into two very distinct categories, the online and the offline.
Hmm.
And so I think they connect, right? Absolutely, they connect. And it should be your goal as a creator to connect the
Oh
offline
yeah.
to the online to the offline. But in terms of outreach, let's start with offline first. I think we need to remember when you are thinking about finding your people exist in the world just like you do. So where do those people go? So in my case, a good connection for me is local restaurants who display art. That has always been worked well for me. It exposes people to me and my art, but it's a real world connection. I have to walk into that restaurant. I have to introduce myself to them. I have to physically take paintings to them. I have to hang them. I have to make sure that I have insurance, perhaps, for the display of such art. So there's real world things that I need to think about, but it all starts with walking into that restaurant and actually having a conversation. That could start online. It could start online, absolutely. So you could follow a local restaurant, engage with them in social media, but in order for the connection to actually move forward, you need to walk through the door. So that's a
Yeah,
big one, is walking through the door. That could be local art fairs, craft fairs, that could be community events. There's lots of in-person places to connect. And I would also, I know it's a hard thing for people to do, but I wouldn't forget about your friends, your family, your book club. Because honestly, we all hate to be that person in a group of friends. But I'll tell you a little minor thing. Recently, I joined a new book club, and everybody said, "So, what plans does everybody have for the weekend?" And I said, "I'm going to be hosting my very first studio open house. Would anybody like the details? I can send you an email." I opened up the door. Everybody positively responded, and I had half of my book club show up at my open house and purchase art. And that was incredible. And if I had never opened the door to that, in a very non-aggressive way, I would have missed out on making a further personal connection with all of these people. But also, I, I would have not sold five, five paintings because of book club.
exactly.
And so you just never know. And it's not walking around saying, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff all the time. It's simply opening the door and giving people the ability to walk through. And I think we all think that that's going to sound sleazy. But you're not hawking things to your family and friends. You're just opening the door. And I think that we need to
Yes.
remember to do that.
Yes, that everything you said there, it made me think of a whole bunch of different things,
Oh,
actually.
yay,
I just
yay.
had to write them down so I wouldn't forget. So the first thing you mentioned is going, you do a lot of work with restaurants.
Mhm.
Okay. So this is an interesting conversation because Heather and I are very different personalities. Heather is much more outgoing and loves talking to people, and I would say more extroverted than I am. I am the
Mhm.
opposite. I'm very shy. I'm very introverted. I am very uncomfortable putting myself out there. So you're going to get both sides of the coin here, I think. For me, walking into a restaurant cold and doing what Heather has suggested would be extremely hard. And if you're
Mhm.
like me, you're probably going, I could never do that.
Never do that. Yep.
And yet, if you're like Heather, you might be like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to go do that down the street right now.
Yeah.
But I think there's ways that you can warm things up. Like
Yes.
where I could do what Heather did would be to maybe go have dinner in that restaurant, or maybe not even dinner, because dinner is usually busier, but go at lunchtime when maybe it's not
Mhm.
as busy, or sort of just off busy hours, order some food, have a chat with the server, and just say something along the lines of like, where do you get the art for you that you hang in your restaurant?
Mhm.
Because I'm a local artist and I'd love to be able to see if I could put some of my paintings in here, because I'm starting to feel like I have a little bit of a relationship. I'm not walking in cold. So it makes it easier for
Yes.
someone like me. Plus, you've already shown the restaurant that this person came in and ate our food. Like they like what we do.
Yep.
Because you never want to make the ask one-sided, right? You don't,
No,
yeah. So I
no.
think that's a great thing. The
I
other
would, if
thing,
I could expand
yeah.
on that, is that relationship can also start online. So following that
Mhm.
restaurant on Instagram, on Facebook, on wherever,
Absolutely.
and
If you're really
commenting on their
shy, that
posts.
might be the easier way to do
Exactly.
it.
And that's a really nice way, commenting on their posts very positively. Wow, that dish looks beautiful. Wow, I love the color palette. Whatever that is, that regular interaction, if you were to slide into their DMs and say, "Hey, I noticed in your latest post that you have art from a local artist above. Would you be open to a conversation?" That DM doesn't take you outside your comfort zone, but allows you to maybe go a little bit further. So I would definitely recommend using online to get you offline
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely. It's
Yeah.
definitely an option,
Hmm.
for sure. The
Yeah.
other thing you mentioned was telling people what you do. And so when I was thinking back to how I first started, so I didn't leave my full-time job till 2010, but I started freelancing in 2008. So it was 2 years before I left my job. And in those early years, it was a little different too, because we were in that kind of early stages of social media. Like when did Facebook become
Mm.
available to the masses? I think it was 2007. And Twitter was definitely in its early stages then. It was
Uh,
so people were a lot more active on social media, and they were sharing more the day-to-day of their lives on social media
yes.
because there was a novelty to it at that point still, I
Yes.
think.
I
And
remember people saying, "Why would I go on Twitter? I don't want to know what you're eating for lunch."
right.
That's what Twitter was like, I checked in at this place and I'm eating the food.
Yes, you could check in. Oh my gosh, remember we all
Oh,
checked into
yeah.
places. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
wild, and I would never do that today.
Oh,
But
Christ.
anyway, but it was also a much more positive place.
Yes.
The Twitter
Yes.
of 2008 is not whatever the hell it is today, X,
Yeah.
whatever. It's
X.
just
Yeah.
very, very different place. It was where people hung out, you had conversations
Yeah.
in the evening kind of thing. But it wasn't unusual to know what your friends were doing, even if you didn't see them. So I had gone back to school, I think in 2005, and people knew
Hmm.
that, and they knew what I was studying. And so by the time I was ready to freelance, my friends and family were kind of almost waiting for me
Yeah.
to be done so they could hire me to help them. So I did new media design, which was like a combo of graphic design and web design and Flash and all that kind of stuff. And so Flash, does anybody use Flash anymore? I don't even know. Anyways. So they were waiting, and I had no shortage of little projects coming my way.
Hmm.
However, in that first year, I got a really good sense of the kind of projects I didn't want to do and the kind of projects that I
Yes.
really liked. And that's where I started to kind of figure out where my people might be, was based on the
Hmm.
type of projects I really liked to do. But it definitely came from word of mouth, is people
Hmm.
like, I need a web designer. Oh, my friend, she just started doing web design, kind of thing. So I was getting people contacting me, and in those early days, I did a site for a guy who sold batteries, and I did
Oh,
one for,
sure.
like all kinds of
Yep.
random stuff. One of the very first logos I did, I didn't know she was still out there, but was the woman who runs Menopause Chicks. And now she's
Oh my
on the
gosh.
news. Yes, her logo that she uses, that was one of the very first logos I designed. She's still using it. So
I follow them on Instagram. I love
yeah,
them.
yeah. So,
That's amazing.
but like I was doing all kinds of random stuff. And it took a little while for me to figure out who my people were.
Yep.
And it came
Yes.
from, in a very funny way. I had started a food blog, not knowing that food blogging was a thing, but I was really into food photography. And so I thought I'll start a blog where I can just post my photos and how I'm learning how to be food photography. And through that, and through Twitter, and through kind of just going down rabbit holes, which I think is really
Hmm.
important. You have to be willing to go down a
Yes.
lot of rabbit holes when you're first starting out.
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
I found out that there was all these other people who had food blogs, and I found out that they hung out on Twitter in the evenings and chatted with one another. And so I thought, I was using the default WordPress theme at the time. And I was like, well, I should make my WordPress site look nice because I'm a web
Yep.
designer. And then by hanging out on Twitter in the evenings and sort of seeing all these food bloggers and sort of working up my nerve to hop
Hmm.
into conversations, um, the way I hopped into conversations was this was 2008. So WordPress was still very new. You couldn't, all the things you can do on your own website today required a lot of work back then.
Yes. Yeah.
Coding and some CSS and lots of little tweaks. And
Hmm.
so a lot of these people had questions. I'm trying to figure out how to do this. And I knew the answers. So I started sharing the answers and I
Yes.
found my people. That's how I found it. It was very organic. And
Yes.
that became my niche. I became known as the person who helps food bloggers design their websites and their logos. And
Hmm.
so I was doing branding and website design for food bloggers. And that was
Yes.
how I found my people. But it was through those little connections and offering to help. Now, social media today, very different, a
Yep.
lot harder to kind of make those kind of connections that I was making in
Hmm.
2008, but
Yep.
it's still possible. And you have to
Absolutely.
come from a place of service. Like that's how I found my
Yes.
people. I was serving them before,
Yes.
and so there's that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is something you said reminded me of somebody in one of the groups I'm in who, and I can't remember her exact story, but she made, I think, like treat pouches for when you're walking your
Oh,
dog.
genius. Like dog treat pouches. Yeah.
Yeah, but she like made them look really cool, like with like embroidery and all kinds of stuff.
Neat.
Yeah, and so somebody had asked her, she said she gets asked about the pouches all the time and she doesn't feel comfortable selling to people while she's out walking her dog.
Right.
And I was like, wow, this is wild because you are putting it out there and the people are coming, but you're freaked
Yes.
out that they're coming.
Yep.
And so we chatted for a bit and I just gave her a little turn of phrase, like just flipped the perspective on its head a little bit. So she had a way to talk to people because she's like, I don't want to give people my card. It's pushy. And I'm like, you don't have to give them your card right off the bat. All you have to say is if somebody comes up to you and says, that is a really cool treat pouch. Where did you get it? They're asking you where you got it. All you
Yes.
have to say is, "Oh, thank you. I make these. Like this is one of my
Yes.
own. I made this and I have a little shop. I sell them online and yeah. And you can ask them if they want your card, if they want your card."
Hmm. Yeah.
Because they came to you. They asked you. You are not selling to them. You are answering their question. They
Yes.
asked you a question. So just remember that when people open the door, you can walk in.
Yes.
You don't have to pull the door closed again because that's
Yes.
what people were doing to her. They were opening the door. They wanted to know where she got it. The reason they wanted to know where she got it, they were curious. Maybe they
Hmm.
might like to buy one. Maybe they might like to buy one from her. Like they're not, yeah, she just had to kind of flick that switch in her brain that it was
Yes.
perfectly okay if somebody asked her that she could tell them she made them. Like,
Yes. Yes. And I'll tell you, I'll give you a very recent personal example. So we all know if you've been listening for a while that I took a contract job to help fill up the tank after painting exhibition works for 18 months. Anyway, in my office, I hang up my artwork because why wouldn't I hang my artwork on big walls? It's A, perfect storage, and B, makes me very happy. But the also part of that is people walk into my office daily and say, oh, wow, look at this. This is incredible. Wait, did you do this? Yes, I did. I'm an artist. I'm not blah, blah, blah. You can buy it online. Here's the price of it. Here's the exact dimensions. Would you like to put it in a car? Like, you don't have to dive right down. Wow, you're an artist? Yeah, I am. Cool. Sometimes that's the end of the conversation.
yeah.
But the door was opened. I responded positively. And then quite often the conversation continues further. Wow, what do you paint? Oh, well, and then you answer the question. Again, not being pushy or selling, just enthusiasm for enthusiasm. And I
Hmm.
think that's service for service, enthusiasm for enthusiasm. That's what you need. And because what you put out is what you get back. And so if you put out enthusiasm, you will get enthusiasm back. And it might not go anywhere this time, right? Somebody might say 3 months from now, oh man, I met a woman on a dog walk and I see her regularly who makes these treat bags. I'm going to ask her about them the next time I see her, and they'll be perfect for Christmas because it might not be the first time that they talk to you that sale idea is
Hmm.
planted, but you can plant that seed for later if you just respond to the questions
Yeah.
positively.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is all about planting seeds. Selling what
Yes.
you do is about planting seeds and
Yeah.
not knowing when the seeds are going to sprout or blossom.
Yes. Yes.
And
I
and
think that's another one too, for sure, that people like planting seeds. So some things grow a lot faster than others.
Mhm.
And so sometimes I have people who have been engaging with me for years
Yeah.
and just haven't bought anything yet. And it's A, because of finances. It could be because they haven't found the piece that really speaks to them, but they're still fans and they still follow and they still speak my name in rooms where I am not. And
Yes.
that is a valuable, valuable person. And so whether they ever do or not, they speak my name and they are enthusiastic supporters, and that means something.
Hmm.
I for sure, I think for sure, like we can all say somebody doesn't need to be a customer of yours to be a big fan or supporter.
Absolutely. Remember the old adage, which is quite rooted in truth, that it takes 7 to 8 connections before a person will buy
Yes.
from you. So those
Yep.
connections, I think in this day and age, we think of those connections as being online connections and how many emails they get from us.
Yeah.
But remember that those connections can also be running into them while you're walking your dog or
Yep.
when they come into your office at work. All those little things are points of connection of them becoming familiar with who you are, what you do,
Yes.
and building up that trust factor.
Yes.
And that's where those in-person connections are so valuable. We trust people far quicker, I think, in person when we've met
Hmm.
them, looked them in the eye, had a
Yep.
conversation with them. And those are the people we're more likely to recommend to our friends and family when they
Hmm.
come with looking for, we'd love to get some art for little Janie's bedroom. She's going into a big girl bedroom and we'd love to get her some
Right.
art. Oh, I work with this woman who makes the most incredible, um,
Exactly.
you know, you never know where those conversations are happening. So I
Correct.
think, yes, definitely. In this day and age too, I think people kind of scoff at business cards. Scoff. That's such a
Mm.
great word. I love it. Scoff.
I love that word. Yes.
And so anyway, they kind of scoff at business cards as being old fashioned and things like that. And yes, you can use things like QR codes and all that kind of stuff, but there is still so many opportunities to hand out a card. For instance, that
Hmm.
person walking her dog, if the person shows interest in, like, yeah, I'd be really interested in that, then she whips out a business card. Here's my card.
Yep.
My
Yep.
website is on there. There's a QR code that you can scan to get to my site.
Hmm.
Check them out and, see if there's anything that you like. It's
Yep.
it's just answering questions like with
Totally.
information. You're not selling anything. You're providing them with an answer to it started out with a
Correct.
question, where did you get that? And it winds up with them with your business card scanning
Yeah.
a QR code. Yeah, the other thing with business cards, this happens to me all the time. Somebody gives you a card, you stuff it in your jacket pocket or the bottom of your purse and you forget about it. And then
Yep.
6 months later, you wear that jacket again, you pull the card out and you're like, oh, yeah. Whereas
Oh,
if I had
yes.
just had a conversation with you and we had gone our separate ways, 6 months later, I wouldn't remember it. I'd be
No.
like, you'd be out of my head. But just pulling that card out of my jacket pocket is like, oh, yeah, I forgot about her.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to go check that out. I'm going to put it on my desk right now so I remember to do it tomorrow. So business cards
Yeah.
have a habit of hanging around. There's,
Oh,
and you can get
and
200 business cards printed for cheap.
for cheap, cheap. Oh,
Yes.
totally cheap, cheap. And I have to tell you, even before I had business cards, I just used not scrap pieces of paper, but I like handmade some with some old canvas. Like I made them and it was fine as long as you have something that you can give somebody. But honestly, you can make business cards so cheaply. And in fact, again, to continue the offline meeting people, I have recently started connecting with local female entrepreneur or female identifying entrepreneur groups in our region. And there's regular dinner parties. And I am connecting with all different types of female identifying people in our greater region. And these are people who are massage therapists, light therapists, dentists, but like literally every range. The connection is that we live in this community and we identify as female entrepreneurs. And so that in and of itself, going and meeting a group of 30 women and exchanging business cards for this is why we are there. We all went to this event with the express purpose of connecting and exchanging business cards so that they could then bring our name up in another room, or we could make meaningful
Yeah.
connections for collaboration, etc.
Yeah.
And I have a collaboration coming out of one of those meetings because we made a meaningful in-person connection over mocktails and tacos. And th that connection would not have come if I had not gone to that event. And so finding your people, sometimes you go to those events and you don't find your people, but you
Yeah.
know that they're not there only by going. And so you
Yeah.
have to you have to throw spaghetti against the wall. I think a lot of this is going to be experimentation, whether it's online or offline. Finding your people is trial and error, and it will evolve as your business evolves and grows. I think that's a big
Yeah.
thing to remember.
I think when you're first starting out, you may not be thinking of other business owners as like, I think when we start out, we're focused on selling. Like we
Yeah.
need to make money. And so you might not be thinking of other potential business owners as a way to make money, but you don't know who, like you said, you don't know who you're going to meet at these events, and some of them are busts, and
Yep.
and that's fine. You go to another one. But what can happen, like you don't know if one of those women owns a store and she's looking
Hmm.
for local artists to bring their
Yep.
wares in to sell. You don't know if one of those women runs a huge bridal fair every year and she's looking for photography vendors
Hmm.
to come get in front of her brides. Maybe those people aren't your direct customers, although if they own a retail outlet, they very well could be. You could start
Yep.
selling wholesale, but they might be the intermediary step to get to your person. And so
Totally.
those relationships can be super valuable, as you said. So yeah, and you can find those things like there's lots of groups online. There's like a um oh, I'm gonna see if I can find it right now, but there's several in Vancouver. I'm belong to their Facebook groups. It's how I
Hmm.
found I'm looking for a new bookkeeper, and I just put it out there that I was looking for a bookkeeper in both groups, and I literally had 30 people reach out to me to offer their bookkeeping services.
That's the
So,
other thing too, is use your existing community, even if it's one people, 10 people, whatever it is. And I've done it for murals. Hey, friends in the community, what businesses do you think need a mural? And so it was like a group think. I had all these people in my community say,
mhm,
"Oh, I drive by this building all the time and it's boring. It needs a fresh mural." And they copied the,
they'll
they
tag the
commented
business. Yeah.
and tagged the business. And then the business reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I just saw this tag about mural. Like, what's happening here?" And so those you really never know. And so, like Melissa said at the beginning, if you build it, they will not come. But if you put yourself out there, they might. You
Yeah.
you just have to you have to open the door. You have to be willing to put yourself out there and see what happens.
Yeah. So there's lots of Facebook groups that you can do that in.
Hmm.
Just start searching around. Search around for female entrepreneurs, female
Yep.
creatives, female entrepreneurs in your city,
Hmm.
small business owners in your city. Like just search, pop it in the search bar on Facebook and see what
Yep.
comes up because there are so many out there. And then
Totally.
just join some that look like they're active. Make sure you read the rules. You'll find
Hmm.
some are not as valuable as others. Some, it just feels like it's just people dropping links to their businesses, and some of the businesses can
Yep.
be pretty scammy looking,
Yep.
scammy. So, you'll, but join as many as you can at first and find the
Hmm.
ones that feel like they're a good fit of back and forth, give and take. And then
Yes.
the ones, like I'm in somewhere, it's just noise. And so I have the group muted and I only go in when I'm specifically looking for something. I have
Right.
found guests for this podcast by doing that. Like if I've got a
Yes.
specific topic I want to discuss, but I don't know an expert,
Right.
I'll go in and I'm say like this, I have this podcast. I'm looking for somebody who is really good at this, who would be interested in being a guest.
Hmm.
It's great. But you can also do real life. So you can check out your local chamber of commerce. They often
Hmm.
have networking nights. That's the whole reason of being, is to
Yep.
kind of
Yes.
so take a look around and see if there's local chamber of commerce. If your city is or town is small and doesn't have one, although
Hmm.
I think even most very small towns
I
have
agree.
some
Yep.
kind of
They
chamber
do.
or something to
Yep.
help with business development. Um, yeah, if you don't have one, see what the nearest larger town has, because they're
Hmm.
probably more than willing to welcome you. Business
Yep.
improvement associations. So these are BIAs, they're often called. So these are like
Hmm.
local organizations, usually smaller than a chamber. So if you have like a main street in your town,
Yes.
that main street might have its own
We
BIA
do.
where it,
We do in
yeah,
our town.
yeah,
Yep.
most towns do. And usually all the businesses on that street will belong to it.
Hmm.
And they will often have events or meetings and you can meet people that way. This is where it's a little harder when you're a home-based business, is you don't necessarily have you're not necessarily as welcomed in some of those groups.
Yeah.
Um, but the chamber will usually welcome you, but the BIA might be like, you're not on our street. You're not,
Right.
but it's worth checking out. And sometimes the
Totally.
smaller the town you are, the more welcoming they're going to be, because it's not like you're Scott Road in Surrey Delta or Kingsway in Burnaby,
Vancouver.
Vancouver, where it's a big street and it's
Yeah.
packed with businesses. So worth a shot. Also check
Totally.
out local community Facebook groups. So if you're in your like local city's Facebook group, they often have a day of the week where businesses can post. So check those out and see if you
Hmm.
can make some connections there. But then in terms of finding like your like direct customers.
Hmm.
So that's where it can get a little harder. And social media is really rough these days in many ways. I really wish I didn't have to be on there, quite frankly. But the way I look at social media this right now, I don't look at it so much as a way to necessarily connect with new people. I just look at it as a way to nurture my existing people
Yeah.
and have
Yes.
conversations with them, which is
Yeah.
important. It's
Uh, and I would argue, honestly, the most new, meaningful relationships that I've developed have come through fostering and building, fanning the flames of existing ones.
mhm.
And so, by, for instance, my Saturday morning Chart class, by continuing to deliver that to, while it's not a huge audience, I probably have 25 people log on when I go live. Not huge, considering it's been going on for 3 years, not huge. But fanning that flame and consistently reinforcing that positive relationship with that small group of people, I have garnered so many other new people have found me because people have shared their charts. People have said, I really love engaging with this person, brings joy, love the color. So by, by focusing on that relationship, they in fact opened the door to other people by themselves.
Yeah.
I didn't have to actually say, come on in. I just had to be here when they got here.
Yeah.
But it was only through nurturing existing relationships and making sure that they don't forget that I am here and that I love them and that I value the relationship that we have and that I am of service to them in a way that makes me happy and they can see that and that's why they want to open the door for more people to
Yes.
come in.
I've seen so many people on threads in particular. I don't know why Instagram feeds me all these nasty threads, but it's
Ditto.
exhausting.
Yep. Yep.
I've seen so many artists and creatives complaining about Instagram and Facebook algorithms and not getting
Hmm.
new followers and not being seen. I just want to tell them to stop talking. If
Yep.
I'm really honest, because that's not what social media should be about. It should be about
No.
nurturing those people who like, we've talked about this before. It's like the phone company, right? We get so annoyed when they offer great deals to people who are not customers, but they forget about those of us who've been sitting, with TELUS or Bell or whoever for 10 years.
Yep.
Like, where's our deal? you know? And so that's how it when you're people see you on social media complaining about how you can't get new followers, and yet you don't interact with them, you don't respond to their comments, you don't have any two-way engagement going on with the people who show up all the time, that's really
Yep.
off-putting. So I
Yes.
think as far as social media goes, it's a nurture tool. And if you are doing things like Heather, where you can bring, where other people are doing the work of bringing people to you because they have
Hmm.
such a positive experience with you, that is going to help draw your people to you. Because chances are
Yep.
that the friends of your existing customers are probably your people as well. Or some of them will be
Yes.
anyway. They might not all be,
Yes.
but so
Yep.
that's,
I will say though, you need to be explicit still, right? And so people share their charts because I remind them
mhm,
2 or 3 times in every live, I want you to share your
absolutely.
charts. I
Yes.
want you to tell people that you just charted. And so saying that over and over again, not all of them do it. But
And they won't, and they have their reasons, and that's fine.
exactly. But would they have done it without me prompting them?
Mm,
Probably not. And
sometimes they
so
need a nudge.
exactly. And so you need to give them that nudge. And even something like when I hosted my studio open house, I was very clear that bring a friend, bring 10 if you want. And people did. And I had people say, I'm so glad you said that because I wanted to bring a friend, but I didn't know if it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so because you have to open the door and you really have to be explicit about what it is that you are hoping for. People are not mind readers,
No.
particularly when it comes like nobody is a mind reader and they can't read the needs of a small business owner or artist or creative. You need to tell them what you want them to do.
Mhm. Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
I think too, one of the things that's been helpful for me is doing in-person events.
Hmm.
So there is not a community out there in Canada that doesn't have some kind of holiday market or
Yep.
spring market or farmers market or school craft fair or you know
Something.
something. There
Yep.
is at least one in your community that happens on a regular basis. I am willing to guarantee it. If you
Hmm.
don't know about it, it's because you haven't found it yet. You might just need to dig a little deeper. It could be a church sale. It could be
Yep.
something at the Legion. Like it just, you just have to dig around. And I bet once you dig
Hmm.
around, you'll probably find more than one,
More.
but
Yep.
depending on the size of where you live. And that is a great way to get out and being seen. And I see people judging whether or not an event is a success based on how much they sell. And there does come a
Mm,
point in your career where that is a very valid metric, because hopefully at that point you're
for sure.
busy and you need to decide if
Yeah.
something is worth the financial investment. But when you're first starting out, going to those kinds of events and setting up a table, even if it's half a table, like
Hmm.
I've done so many markets where you can split a table with somebody
Yes.
else. You don't even have to do a full
Yep.
table. But it's a great marketing exercise to get in front of eyeballs and for people to touch and feel what it is that you do and become
Yes.
top of mind for them. So even if you don't sell a single thing, the fact that you showed up is planting seeds and
Totally.
helping you
Yes.
find your people, and having those business cards to give out or having a QR code at your table that
Hmm.
people can scan or having something that they can take away with them. So at all my markets, I give out little teeny tiny octopus stickers to kids, all the kids that come. It costs me like a penny to make a whole
Perfect.
bunch of them. Like
Yep.
honestly, it is one of the cheapest little giveaways that I can do. The kids love them because they're
Hmm.
stickers and they're bright colors and they get to choose. I have 3 colors and they spend forever picking their
Yes.
favorite color. Like
Such
it's a
decisions.
production, like it's little kids. Um,
Yeah.
but it's just a great way to get remembered. I'm not just another vendor to their parents. To their parents, I am now the vendor who gave their kid a sticker.
Yes.
Like there's
Yes.
just that little extra thing that makes me memorable.
Yes.
So markets are a great way to kind of start to get out there and find your people.
I would also
Um,
say markets, not only is it the people on the other side of the table that you're interested in, right? Like the people who are coming to the market,
it's
but
meeting
all
the
of
other
the other
vendors.
vendors,
Yeah, absolutely.
exactly, like making connections with those other vendors because they might point you in the direction of a local restaurant that's looking for partnerships. They might point you in the direction of a Facebook group that's really helpful.
Yeah,
They might point you in the direction of a supplier who can get something locally for you. You have no idea what connections are waiting for you until you walk through the door and open yourself up to it. And I know for somebody like me, it's a little bit easier to just throw myself into the crowd, be like, "Hi, I'm Heather," and be loud, and here's my business card. But even if you're not loud and boisterous, that's the opportunity to walk up to people. Hi, I really like your booth. Can I introduce myself? My name's Melissa. I have a table over there. I really love what you're doing. Just wanted to introduce myself. That's it. That's all you need to do is
yeah.
introduce yourself,
You don't
because the
even have
door
to
is
go
now
that
open.
far if you're not that outgoing, but there will be people with booths next to you, and you at
Yes.
bare minimum introduce yourself to those people.
Yes.
And I still consider myself an event newbie, but um, I would say at about half the events I've been to, I have been the one who's had to introduce myself because the other person was even shyer than I was.
Right. Yes.
Or and the other half, it's been the other person who has said, "Hey, I'm so and so." But
Right.
just you just you just want to say hi and introduce yourself in case you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the event and you need somebody to watch your
Yep.
booth. Like at least then you can say, "Hey, I'm just, or I'm going to go get a
Yep.
coffee or whatever." But at every market I have done, I have had conversations with my neighbors when it's been slow because there will be
Hmm.
slow moments at any market. And they've been able to, I think all the markets I've done, I've been around people who've been more experienced than me, but they're able to give you, like, if they do the market scene regularly, if there's a market that you've been wondering if it's worth your time, they can give you the 411 on it. Like, yeah,
Yep.
that one was a waste of my time, or that one's not worth the
Hmm.
booth fee, or this was a really good one. I met some really great wholesalers or whatever. So it's just a great way to kind of meet people
Totally.
and learn more about what's going on. And I mentioned at the beginning that you're going to have to go down a lot of rabbit holes.
Hmm.
And I think this is something a lot of people miss about this is when you're starting out, you need to start diving into stuff on YouTube, diving into stuff on social media. With the business that I have now, I'm an illustrator. I create mainly stationery type items with my illustrations. I do art prints, but the rest is pretty much all stationery items. And at the time when I started, I didn't really know who, I just thought people would buy pretty cards to give to
Right.
friends or to send a thank you note to their kid's teacher or something. I just figured that was my niche, right? Those were my people. But when I started to do a little more research and dive down some rabbit holes, I discovered this whole world of journaling. There is
Hmm.
an entire huge community of people who
Yes.
are obsessed with their journals and their planners and
Yes.
some of them and junk journaling and there's YouTube channels for this
Oh,
and they have huge audiences.
yes.
And I realized that my stickers that I make are perfect for journalers and people who are really into their planners. They like to dress them up. So
Hmm.
this was a whole group of people who I didn't know were my people,
Right.
you know? And then as
Yep.
I continued to dive down, I found this whole other group of people who are really into snail mail. There's like this whole snail mail revolution happening. They love pen paling. They love sending happy mail. They decorate their envelopes. They send their pen pals goodies. And there's
Yep.
again, YouTube channels all about this. Like I spent months watching these YouTube channels, just fascinated with
Hmm.
people would show how, today I'm sending a letter to my pen pal Amy in South Dakota. And she, like they would show their beautiful calligraphy of setting up the page, and then
Wow.
they'd send stickers and they would send like, and I was like, these are my people. Like these are people who send
Yes.
cards and who write letters and who want stickers. And so again, I found a whole group of people. And once I found those people, I was able to join Facebook groups where they hang out. I was able to
Yep.
find them through hashtags on social media. I was able to start following them. I was able to start commenting on their stuff. I've done the last 2 years, February is what's known as Inco Rimo or Letter Month. They're two
Hmm.
separate things. NaNoWriMo is International Correspondence Writing Month. It's kind of a
Oh,
play on
wow.
NaNoWriMo.
Yeah.
And Letter Month is just a month writing a month of letters. Different groups organize them. They are separate. I learned this year that they are completely separate, and you can't mix them up. But
Do not confuse them.
I know. But again, that's even interesting. Like, wow, I didn't realize there was, you know,
Right.
different factions.
Right.
So last
Faction.
year, like there's worlds out there we don't know about, and we don't find
Yes.
them unless we allow ourselves time to go down rabbit holes.
Hmm.
But when I discovered what this was last year, I thought, well, this is great. I love writing letters. Like I legit enjoy the letter writing community. It's not just a community I fell into, but I've always
Right.
loved to write letters. So last year I did a thing where you could sign up to get a letter from me, including some goodies from my shop. And I
Amazing.
had a few people sign up, and I sent some letters to some people who I had never come across before. And
Yep.
since then, a lot of them have bought things from me,
Amazing.
because they got to see my stuff. And then this year,
Yep.
I actually planned out a few months in advance how to promote that I wanted to do the same thing. And I had a better idea of what worked and what didn't work this year. And this year I sent mail to people in the Netherlands. I sent mail to people in Japan. I sent mail to people in
So
the UK,
cool.
as well as all over Canada and the US. And I still didn't fill the full 29 days of February, but I did a lot more than I did the year before. This year,
Amazing.
I made them sign up to my email list to get a letter from me. So I grew my email list. But
Perfect.
again, people who love to send letters and things. And I've already met a couple of really cool new people through this who I think they'll probably become customers, but honestly, I don't even care if they do because they're just cool people and I'm glad I know
Yep.
them now.
Yes.
So, I think that's how you have to approach it, is just think of them as cool
Totally.
people. Like, you're a
Yes.
cool person. I'm so glad I got to meet you. The rest will come, but it's
Totally.
that early nurturing. So
Totally.
go down those rabbit holes. Like,
Yeah.
Heather, you did this when you started with mural painting. Because I remember us having conversations. You'd be like, I found these two girls who run this mural business, and
Yeah.
you sent me off to their website. And then you found other people, and you
Yes.
were watching videos of people painting murals and stuff. And you went down the
Yeah.
rabbit hole and figured out, like, this is something I can do. And now I know how to kind of find the people who
Totally.
might like it. So I think it's so important to have a research day once a month, or
Oh God, yeah.
yeah,
And like
just
those rabbit holes I find, and I've gone done some really recently. I've been super curious about airbrushing, uh, both for muraling and canvases and on clothes. So I've gone down some airbrush rabbit holes and I've started talking to artists who make nothing like anything that I would never make the kind of art that they're making because it's like 3D printing and they're hand painting things. Like it's a whole other kettle of fish. But we're having really interesting conversations about airbrush. And so I've gone down those rabbit holes and I'm talking to them about what supplies are they using? What tools are they using? Where did they buy their first ones? How did they learn the techniques? And so all of those conversations, so enlightening, so enlightening. Plus you're just making connection. And funny enough, what you just said about cool people and not they might not become a customer, but cool people. And I would put a lot of friends and family into that bucket. I have a lot of friends and family who have bought lots of my art and are collectors. I also have a lot of friends and family who've never bought a single thing, and I promise you never ever will. And that is a-okay. It's not their style, it's not in their budget.
yeah,
What their reason, I don't care. But they support and they say my name in a room when I'm not there,
mhm.
and they share my posts. And so you can't discount the cool people who aren't going to become customers because
Yeah.
they are still allies.
Mhm.
Um, and I would also say, just thinking of the personal connection place, and we've talked about it a little bit when we talked, I think we talked about LinkedIn, but you also had a really fantastic episode on LinkedIn that I'm totally forgetting who the co-host was, but you talked
Oh,
to
I've
somebody.
done two actually. I did one with Louise
Yeah.
Brogan. She's a
Yes.
fabulous YouTube channel for people, for small businesses who want to start
Yeah.
LinkedIn. And I also did one with Dorina, the food photographer, who uses it
Yes.
to find uh brand clients to work with.
Brand
So
clients,
yeah.
exactly. So both episodes incredibly helpful, and that both of those prompted me to start using my LinkedIn as
Hmm.
more of an aggressive. And I've actually sold a lot of paintings because of LinkedIn. It's a place where people who worked with me in the beef industry, so nothing to do with art, have
Hmm.
said, "Wow, this is my literally my only connection to you. I don't even know what your email
Hmm.
address is anymore, Heather, but I saw your post on Instagram or on LinkedIn. Wow, bought the painting, amazing. And
Hmm.
now we're on my e-newsletter list." And so you can't forget about those real world connections that are still somewhere online. So maybe on Facebook, maybe on LinkedIn. Um, and that's an opportunity to connect with more people. But again, if I hadn't asked, so if I hadn't put it up and said, "Hey, this painting's for sale," nobody would have reached out to me to say, "Do you have any
Yeah.
paintings for sale?"
You can have all the paintings on sale that you want to have. You could have
Yeah.
tons of paintings on sale, but if nobody knows they're on sale,
Nope.
it's like the tree in the forest. Like if
Correct.
nobody's here to hear it fall, did it fall?
Yeah.
Like,
Did it
like
fall? Exactly.
if nobody knows you have a sale on, did you have a sale? Like
Absolutely. That's
no,
exactly it.
you
Yes.
didn't. No, you didn't. You just had a bunch of paintings in your office and maybe they were on sale, maybe they weren't,
Yeah. Who
Anyways.
knows? Who knows? Exactly. I think that's, yes, that's a big one, I think, for sure, in terms of making
Absolutely.
connections, is put,
Yeah.
you have to, as softly as you're comfortable, but you still have to put yourself out there.
Yes, and like you said, softly, there's subtle ways that you can do it. It doesn't have
Mhm.
to be a hard sell.
No.
Speaking of LinkedIn, I got a connection. I have connection requests in the last couple weeks with people that I had other connections with, and I connected with one of them, and he worked for RBC Dominion Securities. And as soon as he found out that I was already with RBC Dominion Securities, he was gone. And then I had another one reach out who was an accountant, wanted to connect. We also had lots of mutual connections. So I accepted the connection request, got a message from him immediately trying to sell me his accounting services
Right.
and wanting to set up a call. And I just responded to him. I said, thanks for reaching out. I said, I really don't love it when the first
Yep.
email is a hard sell and wanting to get me on
Yep.
a phone call. And I said,
Yep.
I just said, I have a bookkeeper and an accountant. I'm very happy with their services. So
Hmm.
thanks. That is a hard sell. Okay. And
Yes.
it doesn't go over well in a lot of cases. You don't need to do that. You
No.
don't need to be that person.
No.
It's all the things we have been talking about today have been very soft sell, and coming from a place of service. How can I help you? You have a question? Let
Yes.
me answer it for you. You need help with
Yes.
something? Let me see if I can help you with it. You're serving them in some way,
Hmm.
rather than coming at them. You're letting them you're putting yourself out there, but you're letting them feel like they're coming to you. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have to put yourself out there to get seen, but you don't
Hmm.
have to be in their face aggressive about it.
No.
It's
And no, no. And even funny enough, I'm thinking to my recent studio open house, I obviously promoted it in social media, promoted it to my newsletter subscribers and my book club. But then to make sure that everybody knew where they were going when they got to the house, because my studio is a separate entrance, I didn't want people going to my front door. I wanted them to come into the studio
mhm.
entrance. And I ended up making a sandwich board that sat in my driveway. And instead of just having an arrow to point people in the right direction, I said, "Heather Lynn Travis, studio open house and sale" inside. And then I put the little payment methods. And I, in fact, I was watching people walk down my street and see the sign, and they came in. And they only came in because I put the sign out
Yeah.
front porch.
Yeah. It's called
And
advertising, marketing.
it
It's
exactly. And
very
it was,
different from a hard sell.
yes. And it really, like, it was just there. It's not like it was a big flashy sign. It literally was hand painted. But then they all said, "Wow, it's so cool to be able to be invited in. I see you doing stuff all the time. How neat." And I met neighbors who I only ever knew their dog before. And
Mhm.
now I know their name too.
Yes, I
And,
know.
and so, but it was just putting myself out there in a very, very subtle way. Very
Yeah.
subtle way. And
Yeah.
so that just to me, that was the soft sell, the open invitation. My door is open. When I took that sandwich board down, people don't knock on the door. When that sandwich board is up, they can knock on the door,
Yeah.
you know?
Exactly. It doesn't have to be Doesn't have to be in your face, hard sell
No,
at all.
no.
Um, and I think when you come from that place of service and you do a good job, people remember you and they recommend you. And I
Yes.
see this in my local community Facebook group, which is a big group. It's got 18,000 people in it. It's not a small,
Wow. Yeah, wow.
I mean, I live in the suburbs of Vancouver, so we're not out in rural Canada here. We're in the suburbs.
Yep.
I'm in a rural suburban suburb, if that makes sense. Um, but anyway, it's a fairly big Facebook community, and there are several women in the community who make incredible cakes, baked goods,
Mm,
cupcakes, and I'm talking like fancy cupcakes, with
right.
the
Yeah.
incredible frosting, the
Yeah.
kind that you would get for a birthday party. Same with
Right.
the cakes. They're like cake boss type cakes. They're like
Yeah.
works of
Yeah.
art.
Wow.
And there's a woman who sells homemade butter chicken sauce in
Mm.
quart jars and stuff. That's all she does that, and she does scones. It's a really interesting mix,
Oh,
butter chicken
wow.
and scones. But
Yeah. Because I
anyway,
would not combine the
no, you
two.
wouldn't think of those as
I wouldn't
necessarily
I
the two,
wouldn't
but
dip a scone in butter chicken sauce.
that's really all she does is these two things. But they all have their specialities. They do not have websites. A couple of them have Facebook pages, but
Hmm.
several of them do not. But they are the product they provide is delicious. And
Hmm.
all the advertising they have to do is when somebody jumps in that Facebook group and says, we have a birthday in a week and I need a dozen pink frosted sparkly cupcakes. Who can I get them from? There will be 15, 20 people will jump on that thread and recommend
Hmm.
the person who does cupcakes. That person doesn't even
Hmm.
have to show up. And it's
Yeah.
because they have provided such a good level of service and a
Hmm.
delicious product that, see, people are always willing to jump in with recommendations on Facebook. People cannot wait on Facebook
Yes.
to tell you
I've
what you
got a
should do.
guy. Yes.
They want to give you their opinion. They
Yes.
want to tell you what you should do. They want to tell you where
Yes.
you should go, where you're going to
Yep.
get the best deal. And if you don't listen to them, they're going to be annoyed. But anyway,
Yes.
like it's Facebook is just wild. So that is a great way to find your people.
Hmm.
Is all it takes is to provide amazing cupcakes for a few people in that group, and you're going to be set. You're probably going to have more cupcake
Yeah.
orders than you can. There was a lady, she's not even in I think she's moved or she stopped doing it. All she made was Black Forest cakes. That's all she did.
Oh, wow.
And she had a
Yep.
constant stream of people who wanted her cakes. I think they were very
Amazing.
boozy and anyway, just yeah. And like, you know, these people really niched down. They knew what
Hmm.
people wanted, they knew kind of how to get the word out about themselves, and then they let everyone else do the work for them. And that's a
I
really
Yes, I think exactly. You just touched on something, which is the niching down.
mm-hmm,
And that is part of really understanding very clearly who you are and who your business is and who you are not. And
yes.
you said it earlier when you were talking about some early projects when you
Mm-hmm.
first started going freelance. Some of my early commissions, I was so happy that somebody wanted to commission me to paint
They just want
something
to pay you. Somebody wants to
that
pay me. Like that's so
correct.
exciting, right?
I felt like, what, who's the woman who they like me, they really like me. That's the way I
Yes.
felt when I was like, oh my God, somebody wants to pay me for a commission without actually like commission so does not look like a Heather Lynn Travis. Multiple commissions that I've
Yeah.
done so don't look like me, to the point that I'm like, why did you even come to me? Like, I don't, anyway, they were trying to be supportive of a local community
Yeah,
member. So
yeah, of course.
I I get it. And I'm glad I did those things. I'm glad I didn't say no, but I learned that those are what I say no to in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, because it clarified for me what I am not and what I don't want to have attached. Not that I'm not proud of the works, they're beautiful works. If they came back into my house right now, I'd be fine with them. Um, but those like niching down and knowing very clearly who you are and who you are not. So you mentioned wedding photographers earlier. If I met somebody at a networking event and they said I'm a wedding photographer, honestly, it would go in ear out the other. If you
Right.
told me that you are a wedding photographer who specializes in black and white uh, candids, you've got my attention.
Yeah.
If you are right, because, ooh, interesting, black and white, you only work in black and white. Like there's questions to be asked after this, right?
Exactly. Exactly. When you
Yeah.
niche down people and you tell people who your what
Yes.
your niche is, they are curious and
Yes.
they want to know, like, can you make a business doing just black and white? Like, are there people who don't like, how do you deal with
Yes.
people who don't want black and white? And when you tell them,
Yes.
well, I just don't work for them, then they have even more questions because like you can
Yes.
turn work down. Like
Yep.
it sparks conversations and conversations are what people
Correct.
remember. They remember
Yes.
you when they've had a conversation with you because they found out you're interesting.
Yeah.
And something in what you said clicked in their brain and they've filed you
Exactly.
away. So, yeah. And you said something very important there is that you know who you are and you know who you are not. And
Yeah.
right, back at the beginning of the episode, we talked about knowing what your brand story is. And
Hmm.
it is so much easier to tell your brand story when you know what you are not.
Very clear. Yes.
Yes, it's so when you are trying to when you're in those early days, and we all go through this, it's completely normal. And I think it's part of the evolution of your business as you kind of, especially when you, even if you've done this before and you're
Hmm.
starting a new business, I think we still go through it again with a new business
Yeah.
because it is very much about figuring out we do all the things and we figure out where what we are not. And I have to say, once I figured out who I was and
Mm.
who I wanted to serve, it becomes 1,000 times easier to market yourself and find those people because you know where to look for them.
Yeah. Yes.
um if in my service side of my business, I only work with people in the food space, people who
Hmm.
create food content. So it's not even just like food brands. If a
Yep.
food brand comes to me, the person I am going to work with is the person who creates content for their social media channels or for
Yeah.
their newsletter list. Like it's very specific and it's very
Hmm.
dialed in. And because it is, I know where to go
Yes.
to post things. I know the kind of content that those people are looking for. I know what their pain points are. I know
Hmm.
how to market my services. My services are tailored around those pain points.
Yeah.
And that makes it easier to market them. I know what Facebook groups they hang out in. I know who they talk to. And it took me a good 18 to 24 months to kind
Hmm.
of really dial into my niche and get out to those people. But now in the last 6 months, I'm at a point where I have enough word of mouth marketing going now because now I'm the
Hmm.
girl in that spot or the woman in that spot
Yes.
or the person in that
Yep.
spot. There's another fellow who does similar to what I do, but he's niched down even further. He is the person that people work with when they want to get set up. He gets them
Uh-huh.
set up.
See?
I am the person they
Brilliant.
come to when they want the content created. So him and I
Right.
don't even compete. We kind of complement each other. And so it's very easy now when people go into these groups and say, I'm looking for somebody to help me with this. People are like, this is who you
This is
need to
this
talk
person.
to. And
Yep.
again, they're doing my marketing for me because
Totally.
I've niched down. And then in the product side of my business, once I realized that my people were planners and snail mailers, suddenly I knew how to tailor my marketing materials. I knew what to
Yes.
post on Instagram. I knew what hashtags to use. And if I get to the point, and this is one of the things I'd like to do this year, where I want to work with influencers, I know who the influencers are that I am going
Yes.
to reach out to because they are the snail mail. I'm not looking for a generic lifestyle influencer. Yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure I'd get a few sales from working with somebody like that, but I'm going to get far more sales from working with a 2,000 follower snail
Yes.
mail influencer. I mean,
Yes.
and I've
Yep.
gotten to the point like this was a big success for me last week. Canada Post started following me. Yeah, they have been
Wow.
they've been reposting my stuff for the last
What?
month. And last
Thing.
month they followed me because I am like I'm all about the snail
Yes.
mail. Like I'm
Yes.
showing the stamps that I'm using. And this is another thing I do. This is another way that I kind of dive into who my people are wherever possible. And not everyone would be able to do this because it really depends on the type of product you make. But as a
Mhm.
stationary maker, a lot of my product can go out within Canada. via letter mail. And
Right.
so I'm sending my stuff to snail mailers who spend hours creating these beautiful, intricate envelopes to put their letters in. So the
Yep.
least I can do is send them
Yes.
their order in an envelope that has really cool stamps on it. So
Yes.
I go to Canada Post's website and I buy my stamps from Canada Post because my local post office just has whatever the new
Yeah.
release is and the
Yeah.
standard maple leaf, boring
Yeah.
stamps, right?
Yes.
But Canada Post has like everything for the last 2 or 3 years. You can go back and buy
Amazing.
old stuff. And I go onto eBay where there are more people who are selling off old stamp collections and are
Right.
selling sheets of stamps from the 50s and the 60s, small,
Yep.
denomination stamps, but they're still valid. And very often they are selling them at or below cost. So I
Amazing.
stock up on stamps that way. So when I send my envelopes, I use as many stamps as I can fit on the envelope and I try to theme them. If it's a customer who's a regular and I know what they're into, I try to put
Yep.
stamps on that I know will kind of connect
Mm-hmm.
with them.
Yes.
Um, I put cute stickers on my envelopes. Like I make the envelope a joy. I can't do that for US customers because I have to send things small
Yeah.
packet for
Small
customs.
packet.
So I can't do that, but it's just another small way. And then people show the envelope when it arrives on their social media. I just got an
Yes.
order from so and so. Look at the cool stamps. Look at so that gets me in front of more people,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of whom are my people. They just don't know it
Yes.
yet.
Yes.
So it's these small details that can really help get you in front of your people. And it's
Yes.
it's not a quick and dirty process. It is very much a slow burn.
Well, and it's very deliberate. And I would say those small details, one, matter because they're A, on brand. They are so on brand with not only what you sell, but also you, Melissa, as a creator and person. Like to me, that's just like you talking about that. I'm like, of course she does. That's so Melissa. That is 100% you. And and the other thing is the reason people are able to actually share that information is because you have been so clear about what it is you do and are that people can repeat that. And
Yeah.
if you're wishy-washy, I make stationery. Nobody is going to remember that. It's I'm the generic wedding photographer, right? You're craft dinner. No, I'm craft dinner with cut up gourmet hot dogs and sriracha.
And
That's what
oregano.
I am. Right? And so this is who I am. You have to be very specific about it so that people remember it and are able to share it. And those details need to be exactly what you said. It needs to be on brand. And I think that's the other thing. The being on brand, if it is hard for you to be consistently on brand, then it is not authentic to you and something needs to be realigned. And so, if it's not easy for you to regularly say, I do this, I love doing this, if it's a forced activity, it might not be for you. Like, and so, yeah, does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Like in terms of being niche and having so much fun and being able to do it, like the joy on your face. And I know obviously this is a podcast, but I'm looking at Melissa's face right now. The joy on your face when you're talking about that, I can feel it. And in fact, I can feel that when you are sharing about buying those stamps on your stories and when you share those posts, I feel that enthusiasm. And if that wasn't genuine, if it wasn't easy for you to do, then I would question whether it's authentic to your brand. And so this is I would say if you are having trouble or there's a pain point in what you are trying to put out there, then you might want to revisit that pain point and if it is in fact something that you want to embody as part of your brand. Because if it's tricky for you, and not tricky like complicated, but I mean tricky like it feels uncomfortable, it feels unnatural, it totally just all these fucking stamps just piss me off. If that's the way you feel about it, maybe you shouldn't be going down that rabbit hole
Yes.
and leave it to somebody else. Like I think that's
Yeah.
the thing is that like attracts like. And the reason you are connecting with people in the snip is that you are that person too.
Yes. There
Yeah.
has to be a level of authenticity to it.
Yes.
And And as far as the stamps go, I have been a stamp collector since I was
Yeah,
6 years old. My dad's a
exactly.
stamp collector. Like it's just something I've always loved to do. So it
Hmm.
does come from a real, I've never stopped collecting stamps.
Exactly.
As you know, I have a history degree. I'm a graphic designer, and stamps are perfect little
They are the perfect
miniature
marriage.
graphic designs that depict a country's history. Like it's
Yes.
just marrying two of my favorite things. So it
Yes.
comes from a real place. And you're absolutely right. You can't force that.
No.
You can see a gap in the market. You can see a niche that you can dive down into. But the reality is if you are not interested in it, at the very
Hmm.
least, you need to be interested in it,
Yeah.
if not a full out enthusiast.
Yes.
If you're not interested in it, you are never going to come off as authentic,
No.
as if it's very obvious to people when your heart's not in it. And you're also going to get bored. You're going to be like, I don't want to do this
Yes.
anymore. Like this is not,
Exactly.
because it's not filling your cup.
Yep.
It has to be a marriage of the two things. It has to be a marriage of something that you find at least interesting enough to talk about every day, because you're going to have to talk about it
Yes.
every day.
Yes.
And if you're not interested enough in it to do that, then it's going to be a failure
Oh, because
eventually.
honestly, putting your creative work out into the world, just that in and of itself is a triumph. Make
Yes.
people who make things, there's lots of people who make things and a lot more who don't put it out there. So if you are already making something and just putting it out there, you have triumphed, full stop. But to then continue to put it out there and run a business and try and make profit, that is hard work. And if you don't have the motivation behind it and don't have the true, like, this is part of my soul, this is part of my being, this is what I want to do, this is how I can be of service, it's going to come
Yeah.
through and you're going to fall flat. You are
Yeah.
going to fall flat.
There is stuff that we all have to do. We have to do bookkeeping. We have to pay taxes. We have to
Yep.
deal with Facebook outages in the morning when you're trying to schedule a post. You know,
Yep.
all this nonsense that you have to deal with, insurance and um, paperwork. And it's just, the amount of time you actually get to create and interact with your customers is not that big because of
Yeah,
all the other garbage you do. So you really have to, the parts that you really enjoy, you have to really enjoy them to make up for all the parts that you are going to have to do that you don't
totally.
enjoy, all the growing up
Yes.
parts.
Yes. And
So,
honestly, like, to circle all the way back to the beginning, like, how do you go out and get yourself noticed and put yourself out there, whether it's online or offline? If you are not enthused by what you do, nobody else will.
yes.
Full stop.
To me, the most attractive quality in another human being is passion.
Yes.
Passion for what they
Yes.
do, passion for little things. I can watch people being passionate about something all day long. I might not be even remotely interested in what they are passionate about, but
Yes.
seeing them be passionate about it is exciting to watch. It's just
Yes.
like they come alive, they bloom right in front of you, and
Yep.
it's so cool to see somebody do that. And, again, I am not as outgoing as Heather is. I'm the shy one out of the two of us. And yet you probably heard in my voice there where I got really excited about what
Yeah.
because it just comes out naturally. Like it
Yep.
breaks down the shyness. And when you meet somebody else, say you're at a market and somebody comes up to your booth and they're kind of reluctant because sometimes when you're really shy, being the customer is as awkward at being at a market
Mhm.
as being the
Yes.
vendor, right?
Yep.
Like you but when you have that little moment where you click over some tiny detail of
Hmm.
what it is that's on your table, all of a sudden the barriers fall down and you just find yourself having like this crazy amazing
Totally.
conversation with this other human who you have never met before and probably wouldn't have guessed you have anything in common with, but beautiful things can come from that. So yes, you
Absolutely.
need to you need to put yourself out there first of all and foremost. As we
Hmm.
said, you can build it, doesn't mean they're going to come. If they
No.
don't know it's there, how can they come to it? It's not
Correct.
Field of Dreams. So you need to do that. You need to go outside.
Hmm.
You
Yes.
can't
Leave
do
your house.
you can't do everything online.
Mm-mm.
I mean, you can try, but you are going to cut off a whole chunk of potential opportunities by
Yeah.
staying inside. You need to go down rabbit holes. You need to find things that you didn't know existed before. You need to find groups
Hmm.
of people who do cool things that you may never have even considered could be a cool thing. Um,
Yep.
and you need to get yourself in front of them. I saw a really good example online a couple weeks ago. A woman who made pickleball accessories. Okay, so
Oh,
pickleball is huge right now, as we know,
huge.
right? It
Yes.
just, the pandemic happened and pickleball just went
Yes.
boom.
Blue.
So she was like, I don't know how to get my stuff in front of people. And so somebody in the group who is a tennis player chimed in and said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to sit down, and every day this week, you're going to write a letter to a club, a pickleball slash tennis club in your area. And you're going to
Yep.
send them a link to your website, and you're going to tell them what it is you make and why you do it. And you're going to get in front of them. She's like, this is how many like clubs there are in the US for tennis and pickleball. And because she's a tennis player, she knew what the numbers were.
Yep.
She's like, these are how many potential groups you have to get in front of. And she gave like this, like she just gave step-by-step instructions of how to approach them. And this woman was
Yep.
like, I would never in a million years have thought of this. But
Hmm.
see, once you know who you are, you know how, like, all she needed was
Yep.
somebody to just say, contact clubs. So this is what you need to
Totally.
do. You need to get out there. Once you know who you are, you need to get out there and you need to find people who are into what it is that you do. You need to find
Yep.
out where they hang out. Do they have clubs? Do they have organizations? Do they have Facebook groups? Do they meet up? Is there a local
Hmm.
group that meets up? You make pickleball accessories, you probably play pickleball.
Right?
Have you gone and played pickleball with these people? Get
Right?
into their community and hang
Yes.
out with them. That's what you need to do. But if you don't know who your people are, you're gonna have a very hard time getting in front of
Totally.
them. And that's
Yes.
why when you go back to what Heather said at the beginning, you need to know what your brand story is, and
Hmm.
it takes a little while to figure that out. It's not going to come to you overnight unless you are
No.
a marketing superstar, but most of us are not. When we start,
No.
we're kind of going day by day figuring it out. So yes, you got to get in front of those people. You have to show them what you have. You need to interact with them. You need to
Hmm.
fuel those relationships that you have with people who have already found you. Do not neglect.
Yes.
There is a rule in marketing. Everyone knows it. It costs you far more to reach a
Yes.
new customer than it does to reach an existing customer. So
Hmm.
use your existing customers to find those new customers,
Yes.
um, and figure out how to get your product in front of them. Maybe you send it
Totally.
to them. Maybe you just reach out and tell them. Maybe, you have to really sit down and brainstorm hard. But the first step is figuring out what you are not
Yeah.
and then what you are, and
Yes.
being able to write yourself a note, have it on your desk. Like, this is who I
Hmm.
am. We used to do this with the Food Bloggers of Canada conference. Every year, we would set a theme for the conference and we would sort of figure out what we are not. That was the first thing we would do. This is what we are not doing this year. And it made it
Yeah.
so easy when we were having brand and sponsorship conversations. Because if a brand came to us and said, we want to do this, this, and this, we'd be like, that's on our what we are not list. Like, so it
Yep.
was just a hard no. We didn't even have to think about it because
Yep.
that is who we are not. you know. But then we could go back to the brand and say, this is who we are. This is what we
Hmm.
can do.
Yes.
And it made things so much easier when you
Yes.
have that clear in your head. So
Yes. And in fact, the no, so I would say, I'm going to say two things. One is somebody saying no. So going to a restaurant, hey, would you be interested in having my art? No, we don't do that. If this is the only art that's in here is actually my daughter's art, the only
yeah,
art we have in this restaurant. Oh, okay, great. Do you know of another local restaurant that that does display art? So just because they said no doesn't mean the conversation is over. So you can use them to help group think. And I would also, exactly what you said, if you are having trouble, use both the online and offline community. Post to your Instagram, hey guys, I'm looking for great craft fairs in my area. I'm looking for, tell the world, what are you looking for? Can you help me? They will happily, I mean, Brian and I joke regularly. One of our least favorite things that people say, but it's also so meaningful is that when you have a small business, people very regularly, their sentence starts with, you know what you should do. And the reason they're saying that is because they want to support you and they want to help you. And so 90% of the time, the you know what you should do is something you've probably already thought of and discounted because it doesn't work for your business. It doesn't apply. It's not on brand. It's on your no list, whatever that is. But there's going to be 10% that are nuggets of wisdom. And so putting that out there, posting to your Facebook, posting to your LinkedIn, posting to your Instagram, and soliciting feedback from your people,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to weed through a bunch of shit, but you're probably going to end up with some really helpful. And just as you said, people are always happy to say, oh, I know of, I can connect you. Um, so ask the question. Like the
Yeah.
answer is always no unless you ask. The answer is always nothing if you don't put anything out there.
Yeah.
So you have to put it out.
There is literally a Facebook group for everything out there. Like,
Yes.
so,
Yes.
and if you can't find one for the thing that you do,
Make it.
start one.
Yes.
I have done that and it
Yep.
works.
And it
Just
works.
start one. And, we were talking earlier about meeting up with other women or other business
Hmm.
owners and using them to get in front of other people. But they're also a great sounding board, like the
Yes.
pickleball example. That was in a product masterclass Facebook group that I'm in for a program that we all took. And the group is full of other people who are running product-based businesses. We're all in different niches. So sometimes, what
Yep.
works for one won't work for another. But here was this person who was struggling and just put up her hand and said, I do this. I can't figure out how to get in front of people. And she got great advice. So that's where
Yes.
those groups can be super helpful, is just saying, I
Hmm.
am trying to do this and I am not getting anywhere. And maybe you're not getting anywhere because it's an idea that has been tried many times and it's just not working for anyone. That may mean you need to pivot. That's okay, but at least now
Yeah.
you know and you're not wasting
Yes.
time. But other times you're going to get advice you hadn't even considered from people who are
Hmm.
either more experienced than you or who have tried things and they didn't work. But from trying those things, they learned what did work.
Yes.
um, I am in a mastermind group that is fantastic for bouncing ideas off of. That is what we do in that group almost
Hmm.
exclusively, is just be like, this is my struggle this month. And
Yep.
you get like some great ideas um that that you can use to your advantage. And
Hmm.
it's also important in those situations to look for people who are in different industries from you or different niches, because very
Yes.
often when we get into our own niche we get blinders on and we just sort of see directly what's in front of us and what we know. And sometimes somebody in a different niche or industry can give you an idea that you hadn't thought of before.
Yep.
And we were talking about this before we came on the show, is that it may seem obvious to go check out a Facebook group and see if you can sell in there. But there's a lot of people who are not active on Facebook. And so if you're a small
Yep.
business owner who isn't active on Facebook, that's outside of your peripheral vision. So
Exactly.
you don't
Yep.
think to do that. And it's not until somebody says, hey, have you tried checking out a couple of
Hmm.
really great Facebook groups in your niche? And you're like, oh, I'm not on Facebook. Don't use that as an excuse. So I see small business, particularly creatives, doing this. They get thrown something that's a little out of their comfort zone or that is a little outside of their regular line of sight. And they're like, I don't go on Facebook.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool, but it's a viable opportunity for you. And you're
Totally.
just dismissing it because you don't go on Facebook. And you have to be
Yeah.
willing to, when people give you advice, you have to be willing to put aside your objections
Hmm.
and actually evaluate whether this is something that could work for you if you were willing to do. I'm not talking about to
Yes.
do things that are ethically murky or anything
No,
like
God,
that,
no.
but just something that you wouldn't have necessarily thought of.
No.
I was literally reading a thread the other day where a woman was very upset because her stickers, she wasn't selling stickers. She had a sticker store. Well, on Etsy. Well, stickers on Etsy are like possibly the most saturated category
Yeah.
on Etsy. I know
Yes.
because I'm one of them, right?
Yes.
And she was just like, I'm just going to have to close up shop because Etsy's not showing my stuff to anyone. And I was like,
That's not Etsy's
like,
problem.
yes,
That's
but
a you problem.
people started piling on the thread, giving her tons of really great suggestions and advice. And she
Yeah.
just dismissed them all. No, I only work online. No, I'm not willing to go to markets. No, I don't want to have my own website. No. Okay, well, then you know what? You're right. Maybe you should just close up your Etsy shop because
Yeah.
you're not willing to try any other
Yeah.
viable option. And if that's
Yeah.
you, then maybe your sticker shop is just a hobby.
Hmm.
You make cute stickers for yourselves and for yourself, and you share them with your friends and your family, and
Yeah.
that's fun. Because I think a lot of
Hmm.
people open shops after they make fun things for themselves and for their friends, and somebody
Yeah.
says you should open an Etsy shop, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, I should. I'll make all this money, and not realizing the hard work that actually goes into
Or in
people.
fact, researching whether other people are making the same, like and that I would say categorically, like I know Melissa and I both turned what would started as a side hustle into a full-time hustle, but your side hustle doesn't need to be a full-time hustle and it
No,
doesn't need to be a hustle at all. If you
no,
enjoy making something, you make it. And if it doesn't turn into a business or you don't want it to turn into a business, that is a-okay. People
absolutely.
should be free to make and create on their own terms. But if you want to make it a business, there are some things that you need to do in order to make it a business.
Yes, we all should have a
Totally.
hobby that is
Yes.
100% a hobby, that is just for
Yes.
us, that is our way to de-stress, to be creative without limits or
Yes.
deadlines. And yeah, that's important. But
I agree. And
if
I
you want to
think
make
that,
money,
yeah, that's a whole other kettle of, that's a whole other kettle of
especially if
fish.
you want to make money that supports you. I mean,
Oh,
you can open an Etsy shop and have a few sales every month, and you will make a little bit of money, but that's a big difference between making enough money to support
yes.
you.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, you really are going to have to put a lot of hard work into it and work hard
Yes.
to find your people. So
Yeah.
so I
Yes.
hope this episode was helpful. I hope we gave you enough examples to give you some ideas of ways that you can go out and find the people who actually buy your stuff. But I hope most importantly that we made it clear that people just aren't going to show up. You really do have to put the work in and to
Hmm.
dive down those rabbit holes and put yourself out there and uh, push yourself, which is hard.
Hmm.
But
Yes.
every time I have pushed myself out of my comfort zone, which basically happens every day, like that's how shy. It may not sound like it on a podcast where Heather and I, who have known each other for years and are good friends and we're
Hmm.
talking. But for me, virtually every day, I am so shy that there is not a day goes by that I'm not putting myself out of my comfort zone. Um, but you know what? Oh, good things always come out of it.
Totally.
So I think when it comes to, just to wrap the episode up, when it comes to finding your people, there is two pieces to it. There is one, getting comfortable with putting yourself out there and
Hmm.
working on that and practicing it and uh, recognizing that you have to do it. And the
Yeah.
other one is being strategic about where to look, where to hang out, who to talk to, doing your research. Like they're two, one is almost a mindset thing,
Yes.
and the other is like being very analytical and
Hmm.
evaluating things and being curious. Again, we keep coming back to that word, but
Yeah.
curiosity is that's how you fall down the rabbit holes, is being
Totally.
curious. Anytime you see somebody online who's excited about something that is related to what you do, it might be for another business. Check out the hashtags they use. That is a great way to
Totally.
fall down a rabbit hole. Once you've found some of those hashtags, head over to YouTube. YouTube has crazy intense communities of
Oh,
the
yes.
most
Yes.
interesting things that you would never have thought of.
Hmm.
And watch where they are. If somebody is big in that area on YouTube, the people who are following them, all those people who comment on their posts, their videos, those are your people because they've
Totally.
already shown you. So yeah,
Yep.
you gotta do work on both ends. You gotta do work with your brain, your head, your
Yep.
mindset, and you gotta do work with your like research and logic and all that stuff.
Yes. Yes.
So I think that's probably it for this week. You have anything else you wanted to pop in there? You good?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so. But if anybody, if we've missed anything, I would encourage everybody, because this is groupthink, right? This is how we all move
Yes.
ourselves forward, is if you guys have, if you're listening and you have a tried and true strategy, if you have something that worked really well for you, we would love to hear it, because that's stuff that we would like to share with the community.
Absolutely. You can also head over to our Patreon account, which is at patreon.com/and she looked up. You can join our community there for free. I haven't done much with it yet because we don't have a lot of people. You won't get access to the paid subscriber premium
Mhm.
episodes every month, but I will drop public links for things that I think are interesting or that could help you with our business, and you can follow along there for free. I think there's an option for you to just, I don't know what they call it. I think it's just follow this page or
Right. I
something
think
like
it's like a
that.
follow the page. Yeah.
Something like that. So if you're on Patreon and you want to do that, and you'll be able to comment on those posts, I believe. You just won't be able to see the premium
The paid content.
content,
Yeah. Yep.
which if you want to see that, you can subscribe
Yes.
and support the show and all the wonderful people who make this show happen every other week. That would be much appreciated. So that is it for this week, everyone. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another brand new episode, and we will talk to you all then.
Toodaloo.
Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshелookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian creative women, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show via your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. We always love to hear from you, so we'd love it if you'd leave us a review through iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a note via our website at andshелookedup.com or come say hi on Instagram at andshелookedup. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.